There are a couple things that I wanted to rant about that I will share with you here. The first is there's a group of people who are, I mean, nobody knows for sure, but we're seeing all these alt versions of federal agencies appearing on Twitter. And in some cases, they're staffed by former officials of the department. Some cases, it's current officials of the department. As the Trump, national security apparatus gets more and more efficient, probably actual employees are going to be starting to back off. A number of people from the State Department, for example, yesterday were laid off. And this I saw this morning on Twitter. This came from the Alt Department of State. And again, this just might be some guy in his bedroom, to paraphrase Donald Trump. But it may also be from people in the State Department or who were in the State Department. And the way it reads like something written by somebody who does political analysis for a living. Whether it's, in the State Department, of course, that's a big thing. You do political analysis of countries all over the world. What's going on with these politicians? What's going on with this party? What's Erdogan up to? What's Putin up to? What's Theresa May up to? What's Donald Trump up to, for that matter? And that it appears to be the subject of this. And I'm going to share this memo with you and then point out to you what actually happened yesterday within minutes of the end of Donald Trump's press conference, that in my mind, and, maybe I'm running off some kind of, fever dream conspiracy theory here, but in my mind, it indicates that the entire thing was exactly what they wanted it to be. I think arguably right down to the Jewish reporter standing up and saying, no one in my community thinks you're anti-Semitic, but what are you going to do about the rise in anti-Semitism? We've got, over 40 bomb threats of synagogues just since you've been elected. And Trump responds by saying, I'm the least anti-Semitic person you ever met. My daughter and her husband are Jewish. My grandchildren are Jewish. I'm the least racist person you ever met. And just 10 minutes later, of course, he says to a black reporter, do you know the Congressional Black Caucus? Can you set up a meeting? Like, all black people know all black people, right? I mean, it's just bizarre. But even that, I would submit to you, is intentional. He refused to condemn anti-Semitism. He merely claimed that he was not an anti-Semite. A variation on the Holocaust Remembrance Day tweet of saying, of refusing to mention Jews on the Holocaust Day. But I digress. This is much bigger than just that. But what I'm saying is, I think that even at the micro level, even at the level of pretty much every answer yesterday, Donald Trump did exactly what Steve Bannon wanted him to do. And make no mistake, I agree with the analysis of this Alt Department of State that this is Bannon pulling the strings. Not that, Trump isn't, in my opinion, fully conscious of what he's doing. The guy is not an idiot. You can make fun of him all day long. His syntax is garbled. His vocabulary is that of a seventh grader. I get all that. That probably has more to do with something like dyslexia or what. He doesn't like to read. Well, he doesn't wear glasses and he's 70 years old. That almost certainly means he's had LASIK surgery. And as you age, your eyes continue to change even after the surgery. So it may well be that it's just really hard for him to read. I mean, they've got this thing where now the national security briefers are told to keep his daily presidential briefings to 3 topics. Doesn't matter if there's 5 emergencies in the world, has to be 3 topics, and none of them can be more than 1 page. Oh, and by the way, he likes maps. I'm not making this up, right? This is in the news. But back to my original point of the entire news conference in its entirety. Here is the analysis from Alt Department of State. The Twitter feed is Alt State Department, ALTSTATEDPT, if you want to follow it. I retweeted it this morning. You can look on my Twitter line, Thom_Hartmann. The headline, of course, today's news conference and coverage is not chaos, it's careful strategy. And then they write, today's Trump news conference was not chaos. It was the administration's first move to energize their base by creating a nationwide whip organization. Now, some of you may, a lot of people don't know what whip means in the context of politics. Steny Hoyer, for example, is the Democratic whip. He's the number 2. Yeah, I believe that Kevin McCarthy is the Republican whip. The whip is basically the number 2 person who goes around and talks to members of the party and whips them into line to get a vote. They're the vote counters. They're the ones who if we're 1 vote short, they're the ones who go and say, if you really want that dam built in your district, you better vote on this thing. Right? So in other words, they're the persuaders. They're the enforcers. There's a mafia term for it, but in any case, okay, so it was a nation. So back to this. Today's Trump news conference was not chaos. It was the administration's first move to energize their base and create a nationwide whip organization. It is considered political calculus, likely authored by Steve Bannon. Be prepared to counter the strategy. Bannon and other strategists know that the resistance movement is having a more substantial impact than initially expected. The impact is evident on Republican senators on the Judiciary Committee joining Democrats who are calling for an investigation of the administration's ties to Russia. To combat this negative momentum, Bannon and others sent Trump out with an attack strategy designed to appeal directly to his core supporters. Now, remember that phrase. This is the key to the whole thing, and I'll get to that in just a minute. This will likely be effective in energizing his base. The goal of this strategy is not to move the polls, but rather to mobilize a swell of small yet fervent support aimed at putting pressure on the Republican Congress, who might consider abandoning Trump if the political climate in their constituencies demands any abandonment. The Bannon-directed administration is likely strategizing to mobilize their base as a nationwide whip organization to counter the effectiveness of the resistance. Expect more of these base-directed strategies, beginning with Saturday's inexplicable campaign rally in Florida. The resistance must be louder. We cannot simply expect his erratic behavior to damage his effect. Most importantly, we must see these strategies for what they are and continue to pressure lawmakers to do their job in putting country over blind party loyalty. Now, that very much sounds to me like something out of the State Department. So what gives me, in my mind, what gives proof to this is those of you who've been listening for more than a year or two, you know that way back a year and a half ago when I started predicting that Donald Trump was probably going to win the Republican primary, and because he was running as a Democrat, he was saying, I'm going to protect your Social Security, your Medicare and Medicaid. Republicans want to tear it apart. I won't let them. We're going to blow up the free trade deals, which have always been championed by Republicans and fought against by Democrats. With the exception of Bill Clinton, and I get that. Don't call me up and tell me that. But it was even the Democrats when Clinton was president, with a majority of Democrats in both the House and Senate were opposed to NAFTA and all the other trade deals. So anyhow, the minutes after Donald Trump's press conference yesterday, I got an email. Oh, well, what I started to tell you is way back when it looked like Trump was winning, I sent $5 to his campaign. Now, I've been doing this, most of my life. It used to be actually fun. I would see a politician I didn't like, and I'd send them $1, and then they would send me like $30 worth of junk in the mail. That was back when everything was direct mail, and it was actually expensive to mail things out. And I was like, sabotage. Well, now it's email, so it doesn't cost him anything, but I just wanted to keep up to date. So I sent $5 to the Trump campaign, so I'm on their list as a supporter. You can do it too if you want to find out what's going on the inside. And this is why it's so amazing. Minutes after Trump got off his press conference, I get an email from Donald Trump. Thomas, you know that I don't trust the media to report on anything we achieve. Instead, you, the American people, are our last line of defense against the media's hit jobs. You are our greatest asset in helping our movement, channeling Bernie here, deliver the truth to the American people. And this letter, it goes on, over the next 4 years, our movement will be subjected to some of the nastiest attacks you can imagine. Remember that memo from the State Department, from the alt State Department saying, there's going to be more? They're setting up their base. But just like during the campaign, we need to stay focused on getting the job done and accomplishing our shared goal to make America great. That's why I made it a point to cut through the media's noise and go straight to the American people. It worked during the campaign, and it'll work again over these next 4 years. But I can't do it alone. I need you by my side, supporting our message and doing your part to get the truth to the American voter. Minutes after the press conference, I get this. This was organized. This was planned. This wasn't some weird ad hoc. Donald Trump wakes up at 8 in the morning and says, hey, let's have a press conference. No. And attached to it is a survey, the Mainstream Media Accountability Survey from the Trump-Pence campaign, the campaign committee. See, he has declared he's running for 2020. By the way, now that he's running for president in 2020, we should really let the next president decide who's going to be on the Supreme Court, right? But I digress. So the Mainstream Media Accountability Survey, this is long, detailed. It's 10 pages long. Lots of thought went into this. This took more than an hour to prepare, and it came out minutes after the press conference. Here are the questions that Trump asked of his supporters. This is basically what's called a push poll. Number one, do you believe that the mainstream media has reported unfairly on our movement? 2, do you trust MSNBC to report fairly on Trump's presidency? 3, do you trust CNN? Number 4, do you trust Fox News? Number 5, on which issues does the mainstream media do the worst job of representing Republicans? Immigration, economics, pro-life values, religion, individual liberty, conservatism, foreign policy, Second Amendment rights. Which television source do you primarily get your news from? Do you use a source not listed above? Which online source do you use the most? Do you trust the mainstream media to tell the truth about Republicans' parties, policies, and actions? Do you believe that the mainstream media does not do their due diligence, fact-checking before publishing stories about Trump? Do you believe that the media unfairly reported on President Trump's executive order temporarily restricting people entering our country from nations compromised by radical Islamic terrorism? Were you aware that a poll was released revealing that a majority of Americans actually supported President Trump's temporary restriction executive order? This is the push poll part of it. Do you believe that political correctness has created biased news coverage on both illegal immigration and radical Islamic terrorism? Do you believe that, contrary to what the media says, raising taxes does not create jobs? Do you believe that the people of faith have been unfairly characterized by the media? Do you believe that the media wrongly attributes gun violence to Second Amendment rights? Do you believe that the media has been far too quick to spread false stories about our movement? Do you believe that the media uses slurs rather than facts to attack conservative stances on issues like border control, religious liberties, and Obamacare? Do you believe that the media purposely tries to divide Republicans against each other in order to help elect Democrats? Do you believe that the media creates false feuds within our party in order to make us seem divided? Do you believe that the mainstream media has been far too eager to jump to conclusions about rumored stories? Do you believe that if Republicans were obstructing Obama like Democrats are doing to President Trump, the mainstream media would attack Republicans? Do you believe that the president's, which is really ironic, do you believe that the president's decision to break with tradition by giving lesser-known reporters and bloggers a chance to ask, do you believe with the president's decision, I think they meant, do you agree, to ask the White House press secretary questions? Do you agree with President Trump's media strategy to cut through the media's noise and deliver our message straight to the people? Do you believe that our party should spend more time and resources holding the mainstream media accountable? This is a strategy. This is not an administration in chaos. I mean, there may be chaos going on in the administration, but I watched CNN and MSNBC yesterday after this thing, and yesterday afternoon and a little bit in the evening. And you get all these commentators sitting around grinning and smiling and yucking about, what kind of chaos and how stupid it was. And Donald Trump looked unhinged, Jake Tapper's word and all that. Be very careful. They used to make fun of Hitler. Oh, he's that little Charlie Chaplin guy with the funny mustache. Nobody takes him seriously. 1 million people showed up in Berlin in 1932 to protest Hitler. Everybody knew he was going to go down. He's just a crazy guy. Meanwhile, hang on.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Meanwhile, it's just been leaked that the Trump administration is formulating plans to mobilize 100,000 National Guard troops to deport the illegal aliens. So here we have, this, playing into the whole fake news and we don't have news anymore, et cetera, et cetera. Number one, Donald Trump did exactly what he was sent out to do yesterday in his press conference, in my opinion. Exactly what Bannon wanted him to do. And number two, the Associated Press is reporting this morning that there is a draft memo in the White House proposing to send 100,000 National Guard troops as a deportation force. President Trump is considering mobilizing as many as 100,000 National Guard troops to, quote, round up unauthorized immigrants, including those beyond the southern U.S. border, in other words, from coast to coast. It's the AP reports the states included California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Oregon, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. Remember Pastor Niemöller? First they came for the trade unionists, and I was not a trade unionist, so I was not concerned. Then they came for the communists. I was not a communist, so I was not concerned. And they came for the Jews, and I was not Jewish, so I was not concerned. And then they came for me. Now, I realize I'm probably badly paraphrasing that from memory, but are we there yet?